Yo, what's going on guys, Arekkz here and welcome back to another Division video. And oh my gosh, today is a really exciting day. So, state of the game just finished and we got some really good 1.4 details today. And I don't just mean like the vague ones we've had in the past where they're like, hey, we're going to address enemy difficulty, weapon balancing, this, that and the other. We actually got some genuine details today based on the build that the Elite Task Force played to actually show us how some of these things are going to be fixed. And believe me when I tell you, the future is bright. Like, honestly, I am so excited for these changes. This is genuinely going to drastically change the way that the Division is played. And I honestly think to a lot of you guys out there that have kind of got frustrations and have found certain things about the game annoying, especially when it comes to difficulty, loot, and the way it's tuned, this is going to be a reason to come back. So, as always, if you do enjoy this video, it'd like to be super appreciated. Comment down below. Let me know your thoughts, but let's get started. There's a lot to go through. There will also be a dev blog going live later on today, which will effectively summarize everything that they spoke about in the state of the game. So what I will do is when that goes live, I will link it in the description box down below. Probably go live in about 5 hours, so just check back and you can kind of see that. But we're going to cover it all in this video anyway, so let's get started. So first things first, let's just get started with the PTS. Of course, as you guys know, it was delayed. There was also no special report this week. It was for good reason. They were trying to sort of get more stuff into the build and kind of work on the sort of delivery process for, you know, people jumping into it and providing feedback and whatnot. So a delay to the PTS is not a bad thing. It just means that, you know, when we do finally get it, it's going to be a better experience overall. So do hang tight for that. There's no date just yet. They're going to aim for it to go live next week, but we don't have a date just yet. And of course, once it does go live, the same rules will apply. So the Elite Task Force applicants will go live first to kind of test it, make sure that it's good, you know, the infrastructure is there and whatnot. And then of course, after that, it'll be open to the general public. Anyway, that's the PTS out of the way. Let's talk about the fixes. So this week they spoke about three main things: time to kill, difficulty, and loot. And not just spoke about them, they actually gave us solutions. So let's start with time to kill. The problem with time to kill is as follows, as they identified. Enemies are too spongy and they deal too much damage. It's not like the 1 to 30 experience at all. The game is too difficult for most players, and I know, yes, some of you guys will pipe up and comment down below and say, well, hold on a minute, I find the game easy, you know, I've got an awesome build, and yes, you probably do, as do many of the other top players. But you need to take a step back and think about this in the wider picture. For the general audience, for the people that don't necessarily have a chance to play all day, every day, the game is too difficult unless you are super optimized with a very well optimized build and gear. And of course, the knock-on effect for this is that it results in limited choice for builds, gear, and skills. Meaning you can't really say, hey, I want to go and have fun with a random, you know, different gear set build. No, you're kind of forced to stick to the main ones, which of course limits variety. And of course, that ruins the whole RPG feel of the game, everything like that. So that is the problem. Now, if we take a look at a couple of graphs, this one you see here, they're using level 12 as the baseline because it shows how the game should behave, and you then get to see level 30 alongside. Now, you'll see for level 12, there's a gradual incline in time to kill. This, of course, means that when you encounter higher level enemies that are further above you, then, of course, it does naturally take a little bit longer to kill them. And that is, of course, how the game should behave. But you'll notice that the incline is quite gradual. This, of course, gives you a nice experience. Level 30, on the other hand, is a massive jump. Now, do bear in mind this graph is also for unoptimized gear, so it's not for, you know, like perfectly tuned, perfect mods, perfect bonuses, anything like this. This is just random gear that you find and you kind of put together a random build. However, if we switch over to an optimized graph, you can of course see the original lines in there, but the new lines represent optimized gear. So you'll of course see for the level 12 experience, a optimized build is of course a slightly lower time to kill because of course, you know, if you're going out of your way to optimize it, then you should be able to, you know, get some sort of mastery. However, for level 30, while it's obviously faster time to kill than an unoptimized build, it is still a significant jump. And this again illustrates that it's not a good experience. Now, if you take home points from this, things to note, at level 12, mods, both gear and weapon, contribute to about 6% of your time to kill, which is very small. At level 30, it's more than 40%. So mods are a huge, huge thing. If you're playing at the end game and you haven't got good mods, you might as well just be using a water gun or a pea shooter. Skills at level 30 also account for a DPS increase of more than 78%, which is insane. And even for things like Pulse, just simply by being level 30, it's just more powerful than when you're level 12 for no apparent reason, so that's also an issue. And the reason I'm saying all of this, and the reason they were speaking about all of this, is because the problem is, the game is tuned, the difficulty is tuned for that top 1%. The game is tuned as if players are fully optimized with the best gear, with the best builds, and therein lies your issue. You know, sure, if you're one of those players with that perfect build, and you can honestly go in the comments and say, hey, I don't actually find the game difficult, then that is because you are that 1% that the game was tuned for. For anyone else, however, who doesn't necessarily have insane amounts of time to sink into the game, and therefore their build is kind of comprised of random pieces that they found along the way and they've kind of had to make do with, the game is not tuned for them. The difficulty is not tuned for them, and naturally they will then walk into the dark zone, get one-shot by enemies, they'll walk into high-level activities, get one-shot by enemies, get one-shot by players, everything like that. It's just a really bad experience. So, those are the glaring issues, and we've known that for quite a while. But what are the fixes? Well, the first thing they're going to be doing is they're going to be fixing the enemy health and damage scaling post level 30 so that it will mirror or match the level 12 curve, i.e. when you get to level 30, the time to kill will be lower and the time to be killed will be higher. And as mentioned, the end result is that that should therefore mirror the level 12 curve, which is a good experience. You know, we know that you can go back and do level 1 to 30, the game feels good, the game is the kind of good balance between RPG, shooter, it's just generally speaking enjoyable, and that's what they want to mirror. Now, if we actually jump over to some videos, you can actually see this. Right now, you can see time to be killed. So, of course, you know, we are very familiar, and this isn't even like an LMB shotgunner or like a flamethrower dude or a sniper. This is just a basic regular grunt with an assault rifle. Still kills you pretty fast, but of course in 1.4, on the right-hand side, this is how it will be afterwards. So that's time to be killed. And if you then switch over to time to kill, this is using an ACR, unmodded, no mods, no gear mods, no weapon mods. Basic ACR, you can see again on the left-hand side, time to kill, and on the right-hand side, time to kill in 1.4. So it is significantly better. So, that is one of the first changes in time to kill. However, that's just the beginning. There is a much bigger plan at play here. So let's now talk about difficulty. Again, speaking about the issues, the main thing is that the game needs more granularity. There is a small jump from normal to hard, and a massive jump from hard to challenge, and an even bigger jump from challenge to heroic. That's kind of like Catch-22 because, of course, if you want to do the high-level activities, you need high-level gear, but that gear comes from those activities that you can't do. So again, a horrible experience. So the goal is to introduce more granularity, which also in turn helps solo players, which is definitely a really important thing, but it also brings back the shooter and the RPG feeling that you used to have in 1 to 30, and again, opens up the game so people have more variety and can kind of mess around with builds and whatnot. So, here's the fix, and this is huge. This is like, when we spoke about before how 1.4 may change the way that the game works, as you know now, this is a fundamental game change. So, in update 1.4, players will be able to select what is known as the world level. You can see it on here right now, I'll explain it again in a second, but basically, this sets the level for all the NPCs across the board, in the open world, in missions, in the underground, in incursions, and in the dark zone. Although for the dark zone, you will still be put into a bracket that's appropriate to your gear score so that people just don't drop down and go to the low bracket and gank people. The world level only comes into play when you hit level 30, so your 1 to 30 experience will still be the same, but when you hit level 30, you'll get a notification, it'll say world level is now available. And then there are different tiers to choose from. And these tiers will affect the, as mentioned, the level of the NPCs, but it will also affect the loot and the level of gear that is dropped. So if you have, say, tier 1, then the loot that drops is typically going to be gear score 163 with a chance at some higher gear score items. Now the idea for that is that if you were to get to gear score 163 in tier 1, you are going to be massively overpowered for that tier. In other words, gear score 163 is hugely overtuned for level 30 enemies. So what it allows you to do is max out in a tier and then jump up to the next one. Basically what will happen is when you hit the appropriate gear score, you'll get a notification. It will say, hey, there's a new tier available, do you want to jump up? And again, you can switch between these as and when you please. You can then opt to go up and whatnot. But if you then jump to tier 2 and you're of course 163, you're then in a competing level. It then means if you jump up and you start fighting level 31 enemies, you're not going to be getting, you know, slapped down. You'll instead be at a position where you are suitable gear score to compete, but again, by being in a new tier, you're then able to earn higher quality loot, which will again help with your advancement. Now, in line with these changes, the max gear score will now be 229, so it's actually going to drop down. Gear sets are coming down in gear score. They're not being nerfed. It's important to explain this. They're not being nerfed. In fact, the complete opposite. High ends are going to be buffed so that they are in line with, and in some cases better than gear score items, because as you guys know, right now, the max gear score items are gear sets, right? You don't really use high-end pieces unless it's like Reckless or Savage. Beyond that, you don't really use high-end items. So they're going to be balanced out so they can pick between each one, and again, that means gear sets will accurately reflect the damage they're supposed to do, as opposed to just being massively outtuned, massively outweighed, and massively outbalanced. So, that's a really good change. It's going to give us much more variety. It's going to mean you won't have to kind of like force yourself into one of these pre-made builds that are just mind-numbingly boring. You'll instead have the scope to, you know, mess around, have some fun, and hopefully it means I can actually bring back like best of builds and actually have fun playing with things. So that's going to be really good. But also, level 34 and 35 NPCs are gone forever. 33 is now going to be the max, but don't just think to yourself, well, hold on a minute, level 33 enemies, I can kill them super quickly, that's going to make the game super easy. The level 33 you know now is not going to be the level 33 you know in 1.4, so don't use anything in the current game as a comparison point because it's just not an accurate comparison. But moving on from there, we of course now know that selecting the world level affects the level of the NPCs, but how does that work with difficulty? Well, now in missions, underground, incursions, anything like that, difficulty no longer affects the level of the NPCs. It instead affects the quantity of the loot that you get. So, because you're controlling the level of the NPCs with the world level, what you'll instead do is if you go into, let's take a mission, you do it on normal mode, and let's just say you get, as a post-game reward, when you defeat the boss and you kind of complete the mission, you get 1 piece of loot. If you do it on hard mode, you'll get 2, and do it on challenge mode, and you'll get 3. Of course, those numbers I am making up, but the point is, difficulty of missions, difficulty of activities, instead links to the quantity of loot that you get. Which means if you're in a tier that is appropriate for your level, and you want to get the most gear possible, let's say you're playing in a group, you could then jump into a challenge mode mission and get a lot more loot than if, say, you were playing through on normal or hard, but the experience will still be fundamentally the same. Of course, the difference between, normal and hard is that, any basic enemies typically have purple life bars. The purple guys go up to elites, yellow life bars. And of course, when you play challenge mode, they are basically elites across the board with different spawns. But generally speaking, the overall level difficulty, the level of the enemies, is controlled by the world level, which you can switch between. And the reason for choosing difficulty is simply if you want to get more loot. Which means if you are a solo player at the exact same, say, level as a group, you can both gear up independently in the same tier. It just means that as a solo player, you could say do normal or hard, because it would just mean that you get slightly less loot. But if it's an activity that you can complete, then you're still getting the same quality of loot. But if you're a group, you could just blitz through challenge mode, get more loot, gear up faster. So of course, yes, it will be naturally slower for the solo player, but that's just an inherent property of playing solo, right? You're never going to be able to compete at the same pace as a group going through together, because it's just, not going to happen. But at least it means there is a way for you to get the same loot, same quality of loot, on an even playing field. It is worth, however, saying that heroic missions will no longer exist. Heroic is now going to be a difficulty reserved solely for incursions. So, heroic incursions will, of course, give you the most loot. And for missions, it will just be challenging. For underground, it will just be challenging. Also, challenging difficulty only unlocks when you get to tier 2. So, tier 1 will just be normal and hard. Furthermore, for those of you guys asking about matchmaking, matchmaking will find people within your tier. But if you have, say, someone that's in tier 4 and you're in, say, tier 2, they can invite you to bring you into their tier, and that would then mean that if they ran through activities with you, you would be getting the higher quality loot. So yes, the notion of power leveling does exist. Someone could power level you through, get you loads of good gear, and you could gear up really fast. And similarly, if you have some trouble in your tier, you can invite your high tier friend into your tier. They could jump in, blitz through the enemies, and make your life easier. So that's really cool. Also, as for enemy AI, the elite enemies are having improved AI, so they'll actually behave a little bit better, a bit more intelligently. So that should be really good. So that's pretty much it. One more thing to talk about now is loot. Now, loot is a really cool thing as well. All enemies will now have a chance to drop something, not just bosses. So when you're fighting regular trash mobs, like those purple guys that just, run around, don't really do much, all of them will have a chance to drop loot. Of course, bosses will have a higher chance at dropping loot, more loot, better loot, and whatnot. But there is still a chance at getting everything from the random trash mobs. Which of course means if you're playing through things like missions or underground, you're not just going to have to wait until the end to get that loot drop. You'll also be getting loot as you go through. The only activity where this doesn't occur are incursions, because they will still only give you loot when you complete the incursion. But everything else, like underground, missions, dark zone, even trash mobs, the regular small guys, can give you loot. Plus, and this is a massive one, this is so big for those of you guys that hate the dark zone, patrolling mobs are going to be added back into the open world. So things like Bullet King or any of the other named bosses are coming back, which in essence, right, this is the really cool thing, in essence turns the open PvE world into kind of like a PvE dark zone. Not in the same sense, because you don't obviously need to extract loot, but what I mean by that is, of course, you go in the dark zone and there are patrolling bosses. You kill them, you get loot. That's a cool thing, and that's one of the reasons you go into the dark zone. That is now being added to the open world, meaning if you're a solo player or you're someone that just hates the notion of the dark zone, doesn't like going in because you don't like losing your loot, you can then go into the PvE world, hunt down bosses like Bullet King, and farm them and get your loot. And of course, because they're being added back like they are in the Dark Zone, they will respawn, so it's not like a one-time kill thing. So that is going to be super good, and of course you control the level of them with the world level. So if you are trying to gear up and you want to get max gear score, say you're in tier 4 and you're fighting some of those world bosses, they will present you a challenge, but they'll also present you some really good loot. So that, my friends, is everything from the state of the game so far. Apologies this video is so long, but holy crap, there is so much stuff to talk about. That is so good. Like literally, world level, the loot, all those changes to difficulty, time to kill and everything, it's going to make the game so much fun again. This is going to return the game to like how it felt pre 1.1 when it was just like really good fun to play, nicely tuned and whatnot, and I am honestly so excited. And this is only a fraction, right? There are still some more things they have yet to talk about. They haven't spoken about weapon balancing, some of the gear set changes, anything like that. This is just the beginning. But regardless, I am so excited. So it's fair to say that when the PTS does drop, of course, this will be one of the first things we'll actually have a chance to test out. But regardless, That's it for the time being, so hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts down below. I really want to know what you guys have to say, because I know a lot of you guys are still super passionate about the game, just want to see it get fixed, so this is going to be really good. As mentioned, I will link the dev blog once it goes live in the description box below. But for the time being, thanks for watching, take it easy, catch you next time, peace out.